It might be the summer breeze, it might be the summer trees, but I'm feeling better now. I'm feeling better. I'm feeling better. I'm feeling better.
We all have food cravings, a natural desire for something that our body appears to be lacking, even if it's not ideal, such as processed and refined foods. But having a desire for something sweet is a craving. Eating an entire bag of sweets is a loss of control, something characterized as a food addiction. So in today's episode, we unpack food cravings and addictions and provide you with valuable tips to overcoming destructive habits.
I'm feeling better.
Thanks again for watching another episode of Real Health. I'm Stacey Holland, and it's so awesome to be with you again. In my tumultuous health journey, I have to admit that one thing I've always been grateful for is that I'm not an emotional eater. When I'm feeling down, I don't immediately think of a food that I actually want to eat. But I know that this is not the case for so many who struggle to keep food cravings at bay. So to try and simplify what seems to be such a complex subject, I've invited into studio Nicole Allen. She's an holistic health coach, Nikki Robertson, our nutritional therapist, and Angela Hardy, our favorite red-haired kinesiologist. We could go on forever and a day about food cravings and addictions because it really is quite complex. And doing some research for it, there are so many labels. There's overeaters, there's self-assessed food addicts, there are binge eaters. And I think this is the reason why people don't say, I have a problem, because those labels are actually quite harsh. There's a difference between a craving and an addiction. Nick, you want to take that one on?
So I think the first thing you've got to remember is food is chemistry.
Yeah.
And food will interact with our chemistry. So forget about self-control, because it's impossible when your chemistry is not playing the game to control that need for certain foods. So sugar, the easiest one to start with is sugar. Now that triggers neurotransmitters in the brain. It triggers the pleasure centers in our brains. So comfort eating, cravings are all about feeling better. And in this day and age, when we're tired and stressed and overwrought, it's normal to want to feel better because we're wired for survival. And it's a natural thing to want to feel at peace and at ease. Otherwise, we are being hunted down in our brains, in our primal brains. And that's going to cause all sorts of stress hormones. So the first thing to do is to stop judging yourself and realize that there's a chemistry going on here, and understand that there's so many things that go on. I mean, it's hormones, it's not eating enough, it's not eating the right stuff. There's so many reasons why the chemistry goes out of sync. And to sort of unwind and get to understand it's not your fault. That's the thing.
Because that's what a lot of people say. No matter how much willpower I have, I just can't seem to get over this. And that's the thing. It's not just about willpower. Yes, you have to change your mindset about it, but the chemistry is also affecting your desire and your willpower, and there's this consistent back and forth.
Well, it's not about willpower at all, actually, because when we start to rely on willpower, we're relying on that little part of our brain that we use to make decisions. Now, if the brain uses 30% of the energy of the body, that part of the brain uses 30% of the energy available to the brain. So that's a lot of the energy available to the brain is being used to make decisions. So that part of the brain actually gets tired, it gets worn out. And when you've made 100 decisions already today about what shoes you're going to wear, what clothes you're going to wear, how you're going to get to work, you know, how you're going to miss being slaughtered by a taxi on the way, what you're going to do here, what you're going to do there, by the time it comes to afternoon cravings or what am I going to eat, and you're feeling exhausted in that part of your day, you actually are physiologically incapable of making a good decision. So this is where you're saying, oh, if I have to rely on willpower, then I'm relying on that part of my brain that becomes exhausted. The art of all of this is to not rely on willpower. You have to have other methodologies to soothe the craving, to soothe the inner crazy beast, to manage your stress and the way that your mind is busy ticking and working and creating more anxiety, more stress that needs to be soothed.
In fact, just understanding that, I know, is going to free up a lot of people, because that's the thing, is once you get that aha moment, it's not me, as Nikki said, stop judging, but there's nothing wrong with me. My body's actually doing the best that it can.
And it's normal.
Yes.
Absolutely. Because you probably haven't slept. You're probably stressed. You probably haven't eaten properly. You've probably got an imbalance of gut bacteria Because if you've got the bad guy sitting in your gut, they're going to drive sugar craving.
Yeah.
Big time.
So there's so much to it. It's not you. You're not a failure.
Very often, a physical craving is a sign that your body is potentially low on nutrients or missing certain vital nutrients, that it's tired, that you might be dehydrated, that you're stressed. As Nikki was saying, there are all of these things that trigger cravings. If you listen to them, if you are able to tune in and figure out what it actually is that your body is asking you for, you can very often identify the cause and the solution.
Yeah.
So actually I'm really dehydrated, or I'm craving chocolate, but genuinely craving chocolate.
Yeah.
My magnesium levels might be low.
Yes. Yeah.
Or I'd kill for a bag of salty crisps, and actually my calcium might be a bit low. So your cravings are messages. And with clients who are nutritionally balanced and eat in a really healthy way, and feed their bodies, nourish their bodies, fuel their bodies on a regular basis, and come in and go, I don't know what it is, but I'm still craving biscuits, and I'm craving biscuits every night at 9 o'clock, and I can't shake it, and what is wrong with me? Then you need to ask yourself, is it a physical craving, or is it an emotional craving?
Yeah.
And in a nutritionally balanced body, that then is very often an emotional craving.
Yeah.
But you need to know that to be able to fix it.
Yeah.
So they feel like such a burden, but in some ways they can be a gift because they give you an opportunity to see what is wrong and to potentially fix it.
Yeah, and one thing that was important for me was when I transitioned to a cleaner diet, or a healthier diet, more wholesome diet, that was when I actually could correctly interpret the craving.
Absolutely.
Prior to that, it was a mixed message that was coming to me, and I actually didn't know what to do with it, you know? Whereas now I can actually tell specifically what I want. It's like my body is speaking to me in a much clearer sense.
But also what you've just said is you're not ignoring the craving.
Yes.
You're not creating a negative space, because that just gives it more power. You've gone, what do I need? And you nurture. And then you almost nullify that desire for something that you can't control.
So since food is linked to our survival and reproduction, as Nikki mentioned, we're hardwired to crave it. In other words, the motivational systems in our brains are sensitive to it. And certain foods can place such a strong influence on our motivational systems that they cause us to make poor decisions that are often self-destructive. Stay tuned, because when we return, we discuss the vicious cycle of food cravings and addiction.
I'm feeling better. I'm feeling better.
You're watching Real Health, and we're talking about food cravings and addictions. And here's a scary fact I found while researching for today's show. The hypothalamus senses that eating has occurred with a delay in time that increases with the mass of the body. In other words, the more weight we gain, the longer it takes our brains to actually register that we've eaten after we've done so, which means that we feel less satiated, and then we have the inclination to eat more, leading to more weight gain. And it's one of those many vicious cycles linked to food addiction. And there's more than one. There's the dopamine depletion effect. And there's another cycle of maybe social environments and being in a certain environment consistently. So after work, you have drinks with clients, you know, or you're going to family function. We can't get away from food at the end of the day.
No, you can't avoid food. It's essential for our survival. So people with genuine food addiction, it's in some ways so much harder to kick. It becomes so much bigger to manage, or feels like it's so much bigger to manage, because you're constantly surrounded by food. And much of what we do involves food. You know, socializing with our friends, you go out on the weekend, there's food. You know, it's everywhere.
I think it starts in the brain and the mind. And the reason why I separate them, because some people, because it's there, I constantly eat it, or I constantly crave it. And then because I'm constantly eating it, it affects the brain. Some people say, it all starts in the mind.
Well, the mind also influences the chemical reactions in our bodies. Any thought is going to be translated into chemical response in the body, which is translated into emotion. And what are we doing when we're overeating? We're soothing emotion. We're soothing our state. So, and I mean, if you think about how many families, I've had many clients, we talk about food, we talk about why, we talk about what's going on. They tell me, it's not okay to not finish what's on my plate.
Oh gosh.
It's not all right to say no when somebody offers me
to the choir.
when somebody offers me more pup or more, you know, more of a starter or more whiskey or whatever the case may be. It's not socially acceptable. to just say,
Or culturally
acceptable. It's a very, very big deal. So, and we do socialize around food a lot.
Yeah.
We use food as our way of getting together, and companionship and connection is one of our primary needs as a human being.
Yeah.
And it's strangely enough, it's a primary need to get away from addiction.
Yeah.
Is companionship and a connection with people. But at the same time, we're around food, we're connecting and doing companionship
We celebrate
with food.
Yeah, yeah. Can food cravings or addictions be genetic?
We do inherit cravings. We inherit all of our behaviors, but it's more about what we learn from our parents than something that's hardwired.
Yeah.
So I think it's the culture and the way we've been brought up and how we anchor to food experiences that is more inherited.
Yeah. Another question that came through, and the person asked to remain anonymous. Can we say that all people who are overweight struggle with food addiction?
No.
Not at all.
Not at all. Which I think is one of the most damaging. It's one of the most damaging things in society is that you assume that overweight people have no control.
Yeah.
It's devastating. You assume they have no control. You assume they eat in secret. You assume they are. There's all sorts of horrible labels.
Yeah.
And it's so often, probably more often than not, the case.
When we think of addiction, we think of drugs and alcohol, right? We don't consider food often. Are people not taking food addiction seriously?
No, I don't think so. And also, you've got to ask yourself the question, how do I feel after I've eaten this? And if you feel guilty or you feel, oh, I'm not going to do that again, then there's something going on.
Yeah.
Maybe nowadays we are more aware that when we make the wrong choices and we can't control ourselves, that there's a problem. But it isn't the same weight as, say, smoking or drug addiction.
Yeah. Some people say that, sugar cravings, for example, sugar is more addictive than cocaine.
I wouldn't say it's more addictive, but it definitely targets the same areas in the brain as cocaine does.
Okay.
But it's more accessible than cocaine.
Well, that's the thing.
Yeah.
You have a nice story. Tell us about, the Rat Park story.
It's fascinating. It was a fascinating TED Talk that I was watching, actually, that this story came up in, about this guy who went to Portugal. And in Portugal, they tried this war on drugs for 20 years. They had 1% of their population was addicted to drugs. They legalized drugs. They cut down their drug use by 50% in the 15 years that they've run that program.
Amazing.
By 50%. What happened was originally they had a cage, a rat, heroin accessible to the rat, and water accessible to the rat. And they said, okay, we'll put the rat in the cage. If the rat becomes addicted to heroin, we know that heroin is an addictive substance and that taking the drug will make you automatically addicted and permanently addicted to the substance, and so you're going to have to wean yourself off in some way.
Yeah.
But several years later, a guy called, I think his name was Dr. Alexander, he said, hold on a second, one rat, one cage, bored out of its mind, I would turn to drugs.
Yeah.
Right?
At least it makes the experience more pleasurable.
Right. So he designed a rat park, which was like Carnival City rat. It was just this extravaganza of ratdom. Other rats socializing, mating, plastic balls, obstacle courses, everything going on in Rat Park that any rat could possibly hope for. And then he did the same thing, heroin and water. And the interesting finding of that was that they would occasionally try the heroin, whatever, as part of their activities. It was not addictive to the rats at all. For the most part, they left it alone. They were not interested in getting their high out of heroin.
Yeah.
And that's the whole thing about addiction, is that this shaming, the separation of you from others, the hiding of the fact that I'm an addictive eater, that I use food in this way, the terrible shame of being overweight. I mean, it's quite ridiculous, actually, how shameful being overweight is for people.
Yeah.
So we're hitting this vicious cycle. I'm anxious, I need to soothe. I've been taught to soothe and to reward with food. I eat, I judge my eating. I become more anxious and stressed around that.
Yet at the same time, I feel better.
I feel better,
so
but I feel worse.
It's a conflicting of emotions sometimes.
And like any drug, eventually you need to eat more to feel better.
Yeah.
A small amount won't work anymore.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to actually go deeper into the emotional factors associated to cravings and food addictions as well. But many people struggle silently, as we've just mentioned, with addictions to food, and they have an unhealthy relationship with food as well. We chatted to health coach and wellness enthusiast Cara Lisa, also known as Cara Licious, to get some tips on how we can improve this.
Haralicious coconut milk ice cream was an idea that I had because I wanted to be able to offer people something that's healthy and enjoyable, that's a treat, that's indulgent, but without all the guilt associated with it, you know. So I wanted to create an honest product that's people can really enjoy and that's nourishing and healthy. And that is sweet, but using the right stuff to sweeten the product rather than, you know, your everyday sugars. First and foremost, it's so important for us to actually tune into our bodies and try and understand them better. You know, so often we look to external sources for information. And the truth is that your body is an exceptionally intelligent communication mechanism that we just fail to tap into. So by being more intuitive and really connecting to your body, you'll be able to understand why it is that you're craving certain foods at certain times. And this is all about awareness and being more mindful about how you're eating and what you're eating and when and why. In terms of deficiencies, it is also important to every so often have your blood tests to determine if there is anything lacking. So in terms of curbing cravings, especially when it's sugar cravings, we know that this is a lack of energy. So rather enjoy healthy fats and oils and proteins like lean cuts of chicken or meat or fish, healthy fats in terms of macadamia nuts, macadamia nut butter, coconut oil, olive oil. Those are the kind of things that will help curb your cravings and will energize you in a positive way rather than leave you feeling lethargic. Because with sugar, it's going to give you a quick burst of energy, but then it's going to leave you feeling flat very soon after, reason being because your blood sugar levels spike. So you want to find foods that are going to stabilize your blood sugar levels to give you that long-lasting energy and also to help curb those kind of cravings. Also sleep. Sleep is so important and it's something that people forget about when they're embarking on a healthy living or healthy eating lifestyle. If you are tired, your appetite goes crazy. It's because you're lacking energy and you need something to keep you going because obviously you're stressed, you know, you've got lots of work going on and therefore the first thing your body turns to when it can't sleep is food for energy. So rather make sure that you're getting enough sleep and getting enough rest to be energized and obviously to help curb those cravings. I actually love dates. That's probably one of my biggest food weaknesses, and even though they are healthy, obviously too much of anything is bad and I can sometimes overdo the dates. So what I actually like to do is combine my dates when I do have them with a healthy fat. And the reason why is because if you add a fat, a fiber or a protein to a high glycemic food, such as dates, it actually lowers the glycemic impact of the food on your body. So your blood sugar levels therefore stay more level and it doesn't impact your body in a way that it would otherwise, i.e. to give you that blood sugar level spike, feeling lethargic, you know, quite quickly after you eat it. And so yeah, there's just those quick and simple tips and tricks that you can apply to unhealthy foods that you sometimes crave. And the fat, fiber and protein rule can actually be applied to any form of high GI carbohydrates. So for example, even if you're having chips and you feel like chips, rather have it with like a full fat dairy dip, because that again will help lower the glycemic impact of the chips on your blood sugar levels and in turn won't stimulate fat storage as much as it would if you were eating it alone.
Don't go away, because when we come back, we'll explore a little deeper, all the way into the state of your gut and how an imbalance of bacteria may be causing your food addiction and your cravings.
I'm feeling better. I'm feeling better.
If you've just tuned into Real Health, we're discussing food cravings and addictions, emotional eating as well. And foods that scientists find most addictive are sugar, fat, flour, wheat, salt, artificial sweeteners, and even caffeine. But the tricky thing is that sugar is added to so many foods, even those that are supposed to be savory, such as tomato sauce, salad dressings, crackers, and even meat. Yep, check the label of those burger patties that you love the next time you go and buy them. So why are some people not addicted to certain foods? Like we were talking about it earlier on, I never had an emotional experience or connection with food. You've actually highlighted why. I never rewarded myself with food, nor did I get rewarded with food. That's a difficult thing to break, because if it's something, I mean, if you're only figuring that out in your 40s or your 50s, even in your 30s, that's 30 years of being used to.
Yes.
It's your go-to.
Yeah, exactly.
We crave reward. We want affirmation, we want approval, we want the satisfaction of a reward. Martha Beck, who's one of my absolute favorite authors, she says reward yourself 3 times a day without fail. Twice, sommer net so, because you can, and once when you do something scary.
Okay.
Something that frightens you or is hard for you in some way. But the thing is that how are we rewarding ourselves?
Yeah,
because
what do
we
you
are in the
use?
habit of using food. And I have many, many clients, they come to me with food issues, they say to me, I say, what are you doing to reward yourself? What are you doing to soothe yourself? Food is the only thing that they have on their plate to reward and soothe themselves.
Yeah.
And I can literally sit with them and send them home for a week with homework to come up with even 5 things. Tricky to even come up with 5 different ways of rewarding yourself or soothing yourself other than food, because it's just not on their radar to reward themselves in any other way.
So if I had a problem, I was overweight and I'm struggling with a particular addiction and yet I'm not emotionally triggered, is there a way to use my emotions in a good way to develop a better relationship with food?
We try to use the whip instead of the carrot.
Yeah.
You know, when we're very young, we're taught by reward how to stand up. You're so wonderful, you're so clever, this one's fantastic. And then we taught how to walk, and we're like, oh, you're so clever. And then we taught how to talk, oh, you're so wonderful. And then at some point, what is wrong with you? Why can't you do your maths?
Yeah.
And so we're then taught to use the whip. And as we get older, we start to use the whip on ourselves. As a kinesiologist, I know for a fact that if I were to do a muscle test on the thing that you say to yourself when you are using the whip, you will literally show a complete loss of energy in your body.
Okay.
So if I put your arm up and I push down and you think about that thing that you say to yourself, I'm so stupid, I'm an idiot, why can't I get this right, what's wrong with me? The guilt feelings, all that kind of stuff, you will just whoop, and you will not be able to hold that arm up whatsoever. So it's an illusion that the whip is a good way to motivate ourselves.
Yeah.
Loving kindness.
Absolutely. No healing of any kind. And it starts with self-kindness. And self-compassion, which is so hard when your default setting is to be hard on yourself.
Because it's your belief that you have to.
It's your belief, absolutely. And it's your belief that it's the only way you will achieve. Is if I push myself, if I push myself, if I push myself. But then you just actually end up reinforcing subconscious feelings of failure. And worthlessness. So kindness and compassion is the first step. Your self-belief is everything. So if you're having physical cravings, if you believe, there are practical steps that you can do to deal with your physical cravings. If they're a result of dehydration or nutrient deficiencies, you deal with those and it helps. But you also need to believe that you can overcome it, and you need to believe that you are absolutely worth getting better. So that you commit to yourself.
You said it's a courageous step that one has to take.
It requires so much courage. A lot of
Nick,
courage.
talk to us a little bit about dopamine and serotonin, because they influence the way we feel. So that's where the emotional factor comes in from a real physiological level.
Your dopamine and serotonin are your happy neurotransmitters, so they keep you feeling peaceful, content, and just generally feeling good. So not manic. That's a whole other story. So those neurotransmitters are created in the gut. The end product is in the brain. So if what's going on in the gut is not kosher, for want of a better description, you're going to feel progressively more miserable. And the quickest way to rectify that is with sugar, because it creates an insulin burst, but together with that, it boosts those neurotransmitters. The thing is, the signal also gets muted the more sugar we eat, so the more sugar we need. And you're not addressing the underlying cause either. And when we spoke earlier about boredom, that's the reason why we want to eat. You sit in front of a movie, you want to eat popcorn because you're kind of like, it's a learned behavior, but boredom will trigger eating because boredom doesn't feel nice. It doesn't create that happy sort of space. So it's about learning what your triggers are. It's about not buying these things. So very often in our practice, we've got people who come and say, I can't help eating these wine gums. Why are you buying them?
God, even if you don't have them.
Just in case.
You know, also when you're looking at dealing with sugar addiction, you've got to have other contingencies in place. You can't just go, well, I'm going to give it up. Because it's more powerful than you are. It's more powerful than any of us are, because it's that chemical that drives the brain to survive. The reason why the human species has been alive for as long as we have been is because our brains are very good at making sure that we feel good and we survive by whatever means. Don't worry about the consequences in the long term. It's immediate gratification. We are gratification-driven beings. That is what we are. You can't get away from it. So if you're trying to give up chocolate or sugar. You've got to have something in its place because the brain can't perceive negative spaces.
Because we use food as an antidepressant as well.
All the time.
Yeah.
Alcohol, food, whatever.
Yeah.
But you've got to have another food, a healthier food. So you're still entertaining that reflex to eat or to nurture or to have that experience, but it's got to be something that's working for you, not against you. So you've got to have a plan.
A lot of people say you can't quit cold turkey.
You can't.
Because often that
it's so
dip
damaging.
is what ends up, pushing you and
Backlash.
propelling you back into, again, that vicious cycle.
And the more you suppress something, the more muscle it's going to build. So if you pick up a weight or you do a leg press, you're going to build that muscle, and eventually
that's so true.
it's going to backlash at you.
Yeah.
And it's very much the same with addiction. You can't ignore it, pretend it's not there, or just like
you
sweep it under the
reinforce that
carpet.
tendency.
Yes, you're just making it stronger. So you've got to go, this is the issue. What is my plan to deal with it? And you've got to have things in place that stop you from craving.
Is it true that for those whose problems with binge eating are progressive and cannot be successfully treated with dieting, behavior modification, or talk therapy, there's often an internal chemical basis to the problem? Now, we've discussed that as well.
It's not just your choice.
Yeah.
And you can't deal with it from one angle. You've got to look at that person in their environment.
Holistically.
All those things.
So you'd be changing diet, but you'd also be changing activities that you're engaged in, perhaps?
You need to make the practical, physical, day-to-day changes.
Pick up a hobby, for
and
example,
also
a new
address
hobby.
the emotional stuff around it. You can't just do one.
Yes.
Yeah.
You need to do both. So, which is why for some people it just feels too big. But if you look at yourself as a complete being, and this problem, whatever your problem might be, affects you on every level, affects you mentally, emotionally, and physically, you need to fix it mentally, emotionally, and physically. And just targeting the one is going to set you. It's going to set you up for failure long term.
One technique that's come up is the emotional freedom technique.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that
EFT.
quickly.
The emotional freedom technique essentially is tapping on the end point of a meridian when you have the problem, the stressor, if you will, in mind. So you've got, it's almost like a question mark around your head. Here, 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 here. You can also do here, here, there, and next to your ears. Every time I get upset, I crave potato chips. Okay, so I'm going to say something like, despite the fact that every time I get upset, I just cannot wait to eat my body weight's worth of potato chips. And even though it feels kind of soothing to me and it helps me to relax, I know that this is not good behavior for me. And I know that it's not really helping me out in terms of what I really want to accomplish long term. And even though this thing that upsets me really, really upsets me and makes me feel very frustrated and angry and irritated and helpless and hopeless, I would like to do better. And so I deeply love and respect and accept and appreciate myself. And what you're doing by tapping these endpoints as you're having this conversation in your head, now with kinesiology, we're much more specific because we can test much more specifically, but you know kind of what your conversation is about and what the things that keep you awake at night and the things that wear on your mind. And so you use that kind of language along with deeply accept, respect, love, and appreciate myself as you're tapping the points. And when you tap the endpoint of a meridian, you're actually literally physically removing energy from your system in relation to that issue.
Wow.
So you're taking the energy out of the issue.
And you're treating yourself with kindness and compassion.
Well, sometimes it isn't better to quit sugar cold turkey, as I just mentioned. Withdrawal from sugar and refined carbs may cause you to feel depressed due to the dopamine depletion effect, and you end up back in that vicious cycle that we referred to earlier as a means to just feel better. Don't go away, because when we return, we discuss strategies to breaking these cycles.
I'm feeling better. I'm feeling better.
Cape Town-based author and blogger Karen Thompson developed the sugar-free revolution because she and addiction specialists on a team believe that addiction is a disease, one that is incredibly difficult to tackle alone. The Sugar-Free Revolution online support forum and blog were designed to offer guidance and support to those who wish to live a sustainable, sugar-free life. Check it out on thesugarfreerevolution.com. So we're talking about strategies, but before we do, I want to just delve a little bit deeper into the role of the gut, because that's where Candida plays a vital role. When your intestines are healthy, beneficial bacteria keep the Candida at bay. However, these good bacteria are killed by chronic stress, which we talked about, birth control pills, and consuming antibiotics. So eating a diet that's high in sugar and refined carbs tends to feed
this bacteria, and I often refer to gut and psychology syndrome, and Ange and I were discussing it earlier, where she was saying the body creates opiates from gluten and casein. And people with gut problems, they actually literally get drunk on carbohydrates because alcohol is produced.
So why would you want to give that up?
Why would I want to? Tell us a little bit more about that, Nick.
Okay, so if anyone has ever been on a candida diet, you'll know it's incredibly unpleasant because
it's so difficult.
It's hard because when you start taking the sugars out of your diet, and that's all sugars, which include fruit, any kind of grain, any carbohydrates of any sort. So it's basically green vegetables and protein. You're creating something in the gut called die-off, where the nasty bacteria are literally dying, and they release gases and opiates and all sorts of things into the system and make you feel terrible. So that's the thing. These nasty guys rely on sugar to grow, and when they do, it throws weight loss efforts out the window. Brain fog is one of the biggest reasons.
Extreme fatigue.
Irritability, depression. The list is absolutely endless, and it all comes down to feeding the wrong bacteria in your gut with sugar. And it starts from childhood. It starts from too many antibiotics. Just the rubbish in food. If it comes out of a factory, it's not going to work for your gut in the long term. It's fine to eat processed food once in a while if it's like really once in a while. But if your diet doesn't comprise whole food, fermented food, things where the healthy bacteria can grow, you're going to end up with a problem. And yes, you can end up with a sugar hangover because sugar does make alcohol. If you think about it, when you make beer, you need a warm environment, you need yeast, and you need sugar. And that's what we're doing in our guts. So we're creating alcohol and fermentation, so that creates bloating, creates discomfort, IBS, colitis, it just goes on and on.
In fact, when you ask people, like after you've had these sugary and refined foods, how do you actually feel? A lot of them say, I feel bloated. Actually don't feel that great, because that feel-good feeling is actually very short-lived. You know, if you are, in fact, one of my sessions that I did with a dietitian years ago, she used to say, beyond your first slice of cake, tell me what the cake actually tastes like. Is it moist? Is it very chocolatey? Is there a hint of vanilla? She said, because by the second slice, the third slice, you actually can't give me any of that information.
I'd say third bite.
I was going to say third bite.
Is it third bite?
That's how you
I would have said marginal utility.
It's just automated because you're feeding something else now.
It's one of the techniques when you're teaching someone mindful eating, for control's the wrong word, but to support their health goals. One of the things is assess every bite. Does it taste as good as the first bite or as the second bite? And if you reach a point where it no longer tastes good, why are you still eating it?
There's a reason why fine dining, the portions are tiny. Because then you actually enjoy it.
You do savor more when you've got a little.
Why are healthy foods not addictive? Why can't we be addicted to broccoli and lettuce?
I think sulfur in broccoli and spinach just doesn't do the same to our brain as caffeine does, you know. Broccoli can be addictive. It comes down to preparation. Just because you're eating healthy doesn't mean it has to be bland and boring. If you know how to cook and you can use spices and garlic, and anything can be amazing. But very often we're too busy to cook and spend time in the kitchen, so we get processed food, and it is boring. It's not like if you did it yourself and everything was fresh, and then you'd really enjoy the good stuff, and you wouldn't feel like the treats, because your meal was a treat, because it tasted like something amazing. So there's so much to it.
Another question that came in from Nicole is, can supplements help in reducing cravings? Which type of supplements would we be taking?
Well, firstly, you know, I wouldn't say there's this specific thing that you should take. We've got to see what you're lacking.
Because that would then rebalance the body, and you would, the cravings would abate.
Very much so. And in pregnancy, when women crave weird things, it's because something's deficient. Because that baby is going to suck all of your resources. Even if you don't eat, it's going to eat you alive. Basically, it's going to. It's a parasite, and it's going to absorb everything. So everything you eat. It's true. Becomes your child.
Been saying it for years.
And if you're lacking something, you're going to crave. It's almost like a scavenger hunt. So it's not like you need weird combinations of food. It's almost your body's trying out different things in the hope that it gets what it's needing, because your body doesn't go, oh, I need 60 milligrams of magnesium. It's just trying everything to get the magnesium. So we've got to figure out what you're lacking and then target your supplementation accordingly.
Yeah. It's amazing because the brain is phenomenal then. It has this filing system of what you ate, what it did, how it felt. That's another thing that I read about cravings. So if you don't have a history of feeding it the right things, where it says, okay, I get these nutrients from this veggie, it goes back to that reference, and that's where all these weird cravings come from. But it's just searching for those nutrients at the end of the day. What are the coping strategies or mechanisms would you advise your clients around?
Cravings are very often triggered by dips in your blood sugar levels, so low blood sugar levels. So I think one of the first things is to make sure that you eat regularly to control or to balance your blood sugar. And that means, a good combination of protein and fats and complex carbohydrates, because those are the things that in combination work really well to balance your blood sugar. Why do we crave something sweet mid-afternoon when we're tired and fed up and exhausted? Because our blood sugars
instant energy.
Absolutely. Your blood sugar levels have dropped, you need instant energy. So it's very much to eat in a consistent, regular, healthful manner. You need to be, to tune into your body, to feed it well on a regular basis so that it can perform for you well on a regular basis.
When I upped good fats in my diet, the sugar cravings went away. And I don't have much of a sweet tooth, actually. Like if you put a slice of cake in front of me, I can overlook it. Biltong and, cheeses, those were the tough things for me. But I found that once I upped good fats in my diet, those type of cravings went away. Is there a correlation between the fat and the sugar? And is there something that balances a salty, savory craving? What is that?
It's a lot of trial and error.
But fats also satisfy the satiety signals in the brain as well, just like sugar does. But when you combine them, then that's where the problem comes in, because your body's going to prioritize either fat or sugar as a source of energy, or it's going to store the others. So if you're going to use fats to create satiety, then use fats. Don't confuse the issue by adding carbs and everything else in there.
Because that's what you mentioned. We vilify sugar when it comes to addictions and cravings, but protein, dairy and fat, and trans fats as well, so those would also be addictive substances as well. So entirely separate from hunger pains, which can be satisfied with a variety of foods, food cravings make you yearn for a taste of something very specific, usually a food rich in sugar, salt or fat. And when you're in the middle of a craving, it feels like nothing else will do to satisfy that urge. NLP practitioner and hypnotherapist Yvonne Munchi shares her thoughts on strategies to employ when those urges hit.
Loss of control is one of the hallmarks of addiction. We lose the control over the intake. We want to stop, but we cannot. In terms of addiction, we have biological changes in the brain. Salt and sugar override the brain's natural ability to stop, to say no. So imagine a plate of pasta that you would cook, pasta that has been made without salt. Then you cook that same pasta in water without salt. Will you eat that plate of pasta? It will not be palatable, right? And you'll say, yuck, don't like it, all right? And salt, the same thing. A packet of potato chips without salt and without monosodium glutamate, you're not gonna eat it. So those chemical substances, or the sugar, which is natural, but it is a substance that is not supposed to be there, it is added into foods. These override the natural ability of the brain to say no. So we can take substances like chocolate and sugar, or drugs to make us feel better, or we decide, no, that's not good for me, and I change my behavior, and that's where behavioral therapy comes in. I change my behavior and I look for lifestyle changes. I go out there and do sport, because if I do sport, serotonin release happens, dopamine release happens, I feel good, and I can feel good healthily without having to resort to substances. If we treat sugar as an addiction, and we're talking people who yo-yo 20, 30, 40, 50 kilos up and down, or are very heavily overweight and cannot even go down. So let's treat food addiction from that point of view, that it is an addiction. Then we need to treat it just like drug addiction. And that means the therapy has to go into, firstly, what drove you into addiction? Look at the emotional motivators that were there and solve them with therapy. And at the same time, there has to be a cognizant buy-in of the client that I have to change my way of eating. And if sugar is the addiction, then one has to abstain from sugar. Just like if cocaine is the addiction, you have to abstain from cocaine. You can't take a little bit and think you're going to get out of cocaine addiction. It's all or nothing. The reward system is where we feel natural rewards. Like drinking a nice glass of water is a natural reward. It is our survival system. We need the reward system, and the reward system is in the center of the brain. If this were the brain, right in the center is our limbic system, and in the limbic system is the reward system. And the reward system gets affected through anything that is nice. If I give you a compliment, you will feel that in the reward system. If you receive a bunch of roses, you will feel that in the reward system. And if you eat, you find some blueberries in the forest and you try them and you say, oh, this is good, you will feel rewarded. Your brain tells you this is good and makes a memory in the hippocampus so that you will go back to find them, because that is your survival mechanism. If we go back to craving, when these drugs hit the brain, there is a hyperactivation of the dopamine system. That reward system is mainly driven by dopamine, and dopamine is a neurotransmitter. That overactivation is like explosions happening in the brain, and the brain is not made to work like that. So eventually those transmitters reduce to survive. So if I like something, like blueberries, I will maybe buy the blueberries when I do my shopping, but I won't necessarily get into my car and drive all the way to town just for blueberries. If you go out to a restaurant and you have a very nice meal, you've just discovered this new place and you've had a really nice meal. You mark it, this is 5 over 5, I'm gonna come back here. So this is an experience, and I will make a memory about it that this is a place to come back to. So that's the memory. Then, if 2 weeks later I have a birthday party, I said, that was a nice place. I predict that I'm gonna feel just as nice if I go there again. So that's the prediction, that's the third part. And then I will make the choice, let's go. How much effort must I put into going back to that restaurant? And so we have 4 components here. And let's say, if we look at a circle, it would be 4 components each quarter. But that's part of wanting to go, that choice, that behavior, how much input I'm going to put into, that somehow becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. And instead of it being a quarter, it takes disproportionate size. And that is then the difference between liking and wanting. And that wanting is then the craving.
Research suggests about half of adults turn to food in times of boredom, stress, and loneliness. And for people who said stress often drove them to eat, the comfort food of choice tended to be greasy, salty, or sweet. So when we come back, the lady shares some parting thoughts with us.
I'm feeling better. I'm feeling better.
You've been watching Real Health, and we've explored the topic of food cravings and addictions and even emotional eating. A great strategy to curb cravings is to simply get moving. Insulin levels decrease after exercise, and elevated insulin levels are another primary contributing factor to food cravings. I know you guys agree. I saw you all nodding in my peripheral vision there. And it's not always rigorous exercise. It's just start and go out for a walk, get moving. Definitely a good strategy. We're going to look at Dr. Oz's 4-step plan. You guys think it's a little bit simplistic. The first step is replace grains with broccoli or cauliflower for 1 week and eat garlic, chives, and leeks. He says you've got to detox your liver. I do like replacing grains with broccoli and cauliflower, so that's a good one. Yeah. Then he says during withdrawal, take a vitamin B complex and 1,000 milligrams a day of chromium
picolinate. Yes? No?
Yeah,
No.
chromium, awesome.
Well, no. Chromium doesn't do anything for your sugar levels. It's
Supposed to help balance your sugar levels,
doesn't.
that's what they say.
They say. but
Throw
they're
some
wrong.
cinnamon in there.
Cinnamon is
yeah,
probably
absolutely.
better than chromium.
Okay, so cinnamon, how much?
A lot.
See, it depends on the person.
Yeah.
And some people will go, the chromium will work for them, but for other people, do nothing. And the vitamin B very specifically has to be folate, not just any old vitamin B. So there's a lot more to this than just.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then he says, eat meat in a ratio of 4:1, limiting it to a quarter of your protein. Also eat leafy greens and citrus. That goes kind of without saying, right?
Good, yeah, good advice.
And it's also the source of your meat, because you don't want meat with antibiotics and all that rubbish. You want grass-fed beef and organic.
Ideally,
And
yeah.
polony is not meat.
Yes, thank you for saying that.
It means like real meat.
Yeah. Address emotional eating, because emotional hunger is often hidden while physical hunger is gradual. And we spoke about the emotional freedom technique. What other tips are you giving guys? Avoiding caffeine because it's a stimulant.
Yes and no, but what I'd say most importantly for me is sleep.
Yeah.
Because if you're not
that's
resting,
true.
even if you're not a sugar addict, you're going to be looking for something to pick up your energy through the day.
Yeah.
And that is one of the biggest reasons why we crave, is because we're exhausted and we're just going on adrenals.
Yeah, avoiding alcohol as well, because I know a lot of people say diet goes out of the window once I've had a couple of glasses of wine. No matter how hard I try, I just want to eat chips and burgers and things like that. So it would be good.
Absolutely, because I mean, alcohol is a refined sugar.
Yeah.
It's going to pull up your insulin. Insulin is a fat storage hormone, and it's just a vicious cycle.
So I mentioned Karen Thompson and the Sugar-Free Revolution. What I love about their manifesto is that you'd think someone that's dealing with food addictions and sugar addiction, you'd start talking about all of these things that we've mentioned. But in their manifesto, she mentions her 10 guiding principles are quit sugar, all sugar, but one day at a time. And I'm really going to skim through this quickly. Dream big. Have a vision for yourself and how you want your life to be. Give your body the food it deserves. Move your body. See health as a lifestyle, not a quick fix. Believe that your thoughts create your reality. Surround yourself with the right people. Express gratitude every day. Value experience over stuff, and know that there's no such thing as failure. And this is her manifesto to people that are dealing with sugar and addiction.
Absolutely.
Perfect sense to me.
Yeah.
The thinking is so important. The way that we punish ourselves for eating, the way that we use food as a reward. You have to get to other things, other ways of rewarding, and other ways of treating yourself when you've fallen off the wagon. Because the moment you start punishing yourself, you're back into cravings.
It's shifting the focus. You know what I have to say? If you're feeling, the reason why gratitude is so good
Exactly.
is because it shifts that focus. And if you're feeling depressive and anxious, it's all it's you. So go and help someone, and immediately you shift that focus. Nicole, you're a Reiki practitioner as well. Can Reiki help with addictions and cravings?
Absolutely. So what it does is it balances. Addictions and cravings are exacerbated, or some people believe absolutely caused, by energy imbalances in the body. And what Reiki does is it works to restore balance to the body, to your various energy centers. So you are supporting detoxification, you are supporting all of the difficult, physical and emotional feelings that you go through as you're detoxing or letting go of a craving or an addiction. Through Reiki. It's very supportive. It's very, it reduces stress. It boosts the immune system. As I say, it balances your energy centers. So one session won't do it.
Yeah.
But again, if you commit to consistent, regular practice, it's supportive in the most amazing way, and it's non-invasive.
Yeah.
And it's really restorative, and it's good for the body, and it's good for the soul.
Yeah.
So it's a fantastic thing to do if you can, to support any kind of healing.
Okay. Journaling is a good thing as well, right?
Journaling. Well, journaling gives you insight.
Yeah.
That's the thing about it. And insight is the understanding of what is driving me to do this, what is driving this positive intention of my behavior that's not supporting what I actually want.
Yeah.
And when you get those insights, that moment of really getting it can change everything in a moment.
Yeah. I know that for some of my friends, for example, and it's something that I've experienced as well personally, is that food is a sign of wealth. It's a sign that we're in a better state, a better place, and therefore I should be eating a lot. I should be eating lots of nice things as well, because When things weren't that great, we had nothing to eat, you know. How would you counsel someone like that? Because that's a deeply rooted and ingrained belief.
They've got to look at their belief systems. You have
you
to
talk a
look,
lot about,
you have to look at your belief systems. If I believe that it's rude to say no to food, if I believe that food defines my social position, if I believe that it's unloving to reject somebody's food or to eat too little when I go out or whatever the case may be, all of these beliefs are going to drive me to behavior that doesn't satisfy what I'm trying to achieve. So you've got to always get down to what is the belief system that drives this action? What is the underlying belief system that drives this emotion, this feeling, this craving, this behavior?
And does it serve me?
And doesn't, and
Does it actually serve me?
Nick, another thing is hydration.
For sure, dehydration.
Drink some more water, you know.
But just based on what you said, and when you're talking about culture, when you look at the Mediterranean lifestyle, not the Mediterranean diet, that sort of, when you're looking at the Italians, the French, everything's about food.
Yes.
Mediterranean diet is not the healthiest diet on the planet.
Thank you for saying that.
It's really not. It's full of butter and sugar and ice cream and pastries and all that. We conveniently forget about that when we're concentrating on the olive oil and olives and fish. But what is it about the attitude towards food? Food is an integral part of a European life. Every day, food is a ritual, but it's not overkill. It's just enough. And it's more about the social integration, the socializing, and the importance of family. You won't see an Italian family sitting, well, maybe you will, I don't know nowadays, but generally speaking, they won't be sitting in front of the TV eating. There's a mindfulness and a sense of community around food. And then it's not just about the food, it's about the bonding. And there's that emotional link.
And with
again.
the French, we don't see giant muffins and croissants like we do nowadays in other restaurants. They're all tiny, small portion control.
Exactly,
you know?
and you don't have 2 or 3, you have 1. And wine and coffee and all these things and butter is part of the diet, but it's small amounts. And it's understanding when to stop. You know.
And they're walking and they're cycling everywhere as well.
And there's other things that create dopamine. So the social integration and being with family and talking and arguing creates dopamine and serotonin. You're not relying on the food for that rush.
Awesome. Ladies, thank you so much for joining us on Real Health. Always great to have you with us. And thanks again for tuning in. I hope that we definitely helped you with some tips today. And if you are struggling, if you're an overeater or a self-assessed food addict, as they call it, what are you doing to overcome it? I'd love to hear from you. Share your story and your journey with me. You can send us an email to info@thehomechannel.co.za. Also, if you want to get in touch with our amazing guests on today's show, you can visit thehomechannel.co.za for more detail. Until next time, goodbye, stay healthy, and remember our mantra: you are healthy, vibrant, and lean. Love and take care of your being.
The summer trees, but I'm feeling better now. I'm feeling better. I'm feeling better. I'm feeling better.